Welcome back to Cliffhangers and Page Turners, everyone. Hope you've all had a fantastic week. We're about to get into a book today that it really just defies any easy category. It's a novel that uses the entire history of art as, well, basically a manual for living.
It's an amazing one. We're talking about Thomas Schlesser's Mona's Eyes. And you're right, it's this compelling blend of really intense personal drama, philosophy, and this incredible journey through the world's greatest masterpieces. It turns the Louvre into like the ultimate life coach.
The premise is just phenomenal, isn't it? We follow this 10-year-old girl, Mona, who is so smart and sensitive, but her life is just shattered by this terrifying health crisis. And her grandfather, Henry, who she calls Daddy, he starts this educational plan, a series of weekly museum visits. And it's not just art appreciation, it's existential preparation.
Yeah. Exactly. It's all based on Henry's belief that knowledge, even if you don't fully get it right away, it works like planting seeds. You have to dig the furrows first, sow the knowledge, and then the buds will open when the time is right.
Yeah.
So this whole structure, moving through different artistic periods, gives Mona this kind of philosophical toolkit. It's all designed to get her ready for this incredibly uncertain future, which is symbolized by her temporary blindness.
So let's not wait any longer. Let's get right into part one, the setup Mona's crisis and the family crucible, because honestly, the high stakes are what make this story so incredibly gripping from page one.
The traumatic incident itself is. It's written so simply and so starkly. A sudden, terrifying, involuntary blindness. She cries out, "Mommy, it's gone all black."
And it's the way Schlesser describes her voice. It's not just panic. He says there's a note of shame in it.
Yes, like some horrible truth has just surfaced that she's somehow responsible for. It's heartbreaking.
And the parental anxiety is captured so perfectly. Her father, Paul, he meticulously notes the exact duration, 63 minutes.
That detail says so much. That kind of precision, the need to, quantify the disaster, it just speaks volumes about his fear of it happening again.
Absolutely. Her sight comes back, but that fear, the fear of it's coming back, that's the secret Mona carries with her. And she only shares it with Henry. That secret is really the engine driving their whole weekly ritual.
This internal anxiety is just, it's made so much worse by this complex and really troubled family environment. Mona is, she's bright, she's sensitive, but she's already so anxious about her future.
And then you have Camille, her mother. She's nearing 40, and she's this study in formidable determination. The book has this great line for her, anarchy intertwined with authority.
I love that line. She's a force of nature. She works at a temp agency, but she channels all this intense energy into this exhausting voluntary work.
It's everything. Isolated old folks, abused animals, undocumented immigrants. She is basically chaos that is managed by sheer force of will.
Yeah. And then there's Paul, the father, who's just facing this spiraling financial disaster. He's a vintage goods dealer. Specializes in 50s Americana jukeboxes, pinball machines.
Cool stuff.
Very cool stuff. But financial ruin is just hanging over him. And you see the concrete sacrifice, right? He has to sell these prized items like a specific 1955 Gottlieb Wishing Well pinball machine for 10,000 euros just to stay afloat for another month.
And his coping mechanism is, wow, it's hauntingly depicted. He drinks an entire bottle of red wine every single day in the store. And he displays the empty bottles on these Duchampian bottle drying racks.
It's such a powerful image. He's taking these, high art references and twisting them into these trophies for his own private anxieties. The alcohol, which Camille later calls the poison, that's his secret pain.
And his biggest fear, which Schlesser really highlights, isn't just bankruptcy, it's losing the store. The place where Mona played so much, dreamed so much.
Right. It's about losing what little respect he thinks he inspires in his daughter. He feels like he's feeling, next to the powerhouse that is Camille and the great Henry.
Which brings us to Henry Volumen, the true anchor of the whole story. He's this magnificent storyteller, and he's backed by what the book calls worldly experience and quiet erudition.
He's the guy who quotes Victor Hugo, but can also simplify his wisdom down to the need to just, dig furrows and sow seeds for knowledge.
Their bond is so immediate and profound. It's built on this idea that the elderly often return to the feelings of their earliest youth, which gives them this unique insight into what it's like to be a child.
Yeah, and Henry's mission, these weekly museum visits, it's immediately set up as, not a history lesson. It's an indispensable education in existence. It's about how to live.
And right from the very start, we get this bit of foreshadowing linked to the grandmother's shadow.
Colette.
Mona's absent grandmother, Colette. Henry promises to tell Mona the myth of Orpheus when they look at a Raphael painting, and that immediately introduces the tragedy of looking back, of losing Eurydice forever, just meters from the light.
And that tragedy immediately sets up the core theme of the whole book, doesn't it? Irreversible loss and the danger of giving in to regret or fear. Mona internalizes this instantly. She starts repeating to herself, straight ahead, straight ahead, straight ahead.
Yeah, she's already desperately trying to find these philosophical defenses against her own trauma.
It's her first lesson, even before they see a single painting.
That sets the stage perfectly. So Mona is armed with Henry on one side and this crippling fear on the other. So where does Henry even begin her education?
He starts in part 2, the Renaissance teachings receiving, smiling, and detachment. He goes right to the Italian masters to focus on connection and control.
Okay, so the very first lesson is through Botticelli, right? Learning to receive.
That's right. It happens in the Grand Gallery. Henry just transports Mona to 15th century Florence, the Quattrocento, this world that's flourishing, funded by merchants and great patrons.
And he uses the paintings, the fluid, graceful lines of Botticelli's figures to illustrate this idea of continuity.
Exactly. The core concept is this cycle of human nature, giving, receiving, and giving back. Giving, receiving, and giving back. It's about being an active, positive part of the human chain.
But even in that moment with this beautiful idea, Mona's psychological state is so fragile. She feels this exciting pull of growing up, being guided by Henry, but it's mixed with what the book calls an awful presentiment.
The feeling that what you give back you might never find again.
A deep regret for a vanished, safe childhood. It links right back to that fear from the Orpheus myth, doesn't it? The fear of irreversible loss.
It absolutely does. It feels like Henry is already fighting this uphill battle against the natural sadness of just growing up. But he moves on quickly.
To Leonardo da Vinci, Smile at Life.
Yeah.
And he puts Mona in front of the most famous painting in the world, the Mona Lisa.
Which is a challenge in itself, right? His first job is to get her to move past the painting's fame and the hysteria of the crowd.
I can just picture it.
So Henry starts describing Leonardo, this solitary genius who wrote thousands of pages but left so few finished paintings. He points out the physical details, the seated view, the faint smile, the plucked eyebrows, and then contrasts that with that utterly fantastical background.
Yeah, the rocks and the bridge. It doesn't look like any real place.
It's a lesson in dissociation, how to look past the noise. And it works. The book says the beauty and generosity in Henry's deep voice cause a fine mist of tears to spring from Mona's eyes, dimming all at once the lights of the Louvre.
That is a real emotional breakthrough. The wisdom her grandfather is sharing is actually breaking through the barrier of her anxiety.
And that emotional breakthrough makes the next lesson with Raphael even more essential, which is to cultivate detachment.
And the timing of this visit is crucial. It comes right after this destructive fight at home. Paul was drunk, arguing with Camille about the bankruptcy.
The tension was all about his fear of losing respect. It's a mess. And against this backdrop of looming catastrophe, Henry chooses Raphael's La Belle Jardinière, a modest, discreet painting of the Holy Family.
The focus is entirely on the mother figure, the beautiful gardener.
Right. She's described as wonderfully calm and luminous, so attentive when obscure cataclysms loomed. The lesson is all about emotional stability. Henry's giving Mona a model for how to exist when everything around her is collapsing.
Okay, but I have to ask, isn't detachment, especially for a 10-year-old who is dealing with this potentially life-threatening psychosomatic illness, isn't that just a form of repression? Is he teaching her to be stoic or just to ignore the emotional reality of her parents' collapse?
That is the core tension of the book, isn't it? And I think it's a great question. But detachment here is presented as an advanced emotional survival mechanism, not apathy.
So it's not about not feeling.
No, not at all. It's about cultivating an internal space, a garden, like the painting's title, that is independent of all the external catastrophe. Mona, having just seen her father's despair, she recognizes how necessary this calm figure is. She savors the painting, and she achieves that internal distance she needs to process the chaos without being totally consumed by it.
I see. So it's about self-preservation first. That makes sense. And that emotional stability then sets us up for part 3. Inner worlds and philosophical battles. The focus turns inward to imagination and transcendence.
Right. We begin with Titian, Trust the Imagination, and they're looking at the pastoral concert, the painting, with the 2 clothed men and 2 naked women.
Which is a confusing painting, visually.
Very. But Henry just cuts right through the literal interpretation. He explains that the women aren't physically there. They're allegories of creation and poetic reverie. They're the fruit of the men's imagination, invoked by the music they're playing.
So he introduces this beautiful Renaissance concept, fantasia, imagination.
Exactly. An imagination that creates this spiral that just feeds on its own momentum. And this fluid concept aligns perfectly with Mona's own internal struggle. It happens right as she's thinking about her classmate Diego's question. So when does a person stop playing?
Oh, that's such a kid question, but so profound.
Right. She realizes that these fluid realms of make-believe, they start to seize up as you get older, and she can feel that she's leaving that instinctual world behind really fast.
But again, I have to challenge this a little. If the world is cruel, like, right after this lesson, the bully Guillaume hits her with a ball soaked in dirty puddle water, isn't telling her to trust the imagination, just encouraging escapism.
Another great point. But I think Henry and Schlesser don't present Fantasia as escapism. They present it as a source of creation and resilience. It's the engine of your inner world.
I see the distinction.
When the external world, like Guillaume's cruelty, becomes rigid and painful, your imaginative life is what allows for fluidity and continuous reinvention. It's about preserving that inner ability to create your own meaning.
That distinction makes a lot of sense. The capacity for joy and meaning is what Henry is trying to, inoculate her with. Okay, so next, the focus shifts to physical liberation with Michelangelo. Free yourself from matter.
And this is a profound, almost ascetic lesson. Henry takes her to the Dying Slave, this monumental statue designed for Pope Julius II's tomb. He grounds the whole lesson in Michelangelo's devotion to Neoplatonism.
Which, simply put, is the idea that the human body and the physical world are basically a prison that the mind and ideas have to transcend.
Exactly. And the statue itself embodies that struggle. It depicts this ecstatic relaxation. It's vertical, but then you see this barely defined monkey head emerging from the rough marble at the base. It's this mix of raw material and idealized form.
And Henry brings in the paradox of the man himself. Michelangelo lived modestly, but he piled gold coins under his bed. He defined his own happiness as melancholia.
My joy is melancholia. What a line. And the lesson is direct. Rise above the physical burden. And Mona applies this almost immediately after witnessing another tense argument between her parents, again about Paul's poison.
The book says she stretches and sighs, and she's actively trying to loosen her limbs to free herself as far as she could from her child's body. She's using that philosophical framework to mentally and physically distance herself from the oppressive atmosphere at home.
She's moving from being a passive victim of her fear to being an active philosophical defender of herself.
That's a huge step. And this liberation sets the stage for Part 4, the 17th century Dutch focus, which seems to ground her in ethics, self-knowledge, and the infinitely small. We're moving from Italian ideals to Northern realism.
A big shift. And we begin with Frans Hals, Respect Humble Folks, where they analyze the gypsy girl. The painting stands at this vital intersection. Is it a genre scene of daily life, or is it a portrait that's meant to reinforce status?
And Halls isolates this marginalized figure, scruffy, maybe a little tipsy, with these ruddy cheeks, and gives her the kind of framing that was usually reserved for nobles. That was revolutionary at the time, wasn't it? Art history was mostly about glorifying the wealthy.
Absolutely. So Henry's lesson here is purely ethical. This girl, with all her imperfections, her faults, her vulgarity, she deserves the same deference as any noble. The painting is whispering this moral imperative. Respect those who society deems humble. It's about reinforcing empathy in Mona.
That's a powerful shift from this universal transcendence with Michelangelo to immediate practical ethics. Which leads us to Rembrandt, Know Yourself, and his self-portrait of 54.
Mona immediately notices the thick, melancholy strokes in the Rembrandt. She links it to the honesty she saw in the gypsy girl, and Henry explains the context. The femme portrait genre was still relatively new, and Rembrandt, who was a huge star, painted over 40 of them. He'd collect these outlandish accessories like oriental costumes just for inspiration.
The key technical detail here is chiaroscuro, right? The intense contrast of light and shadow.
Yes, which he imported from Caravaggio, the master of the shadows. And there's a great moment where Mona suggests the murky atmosphere just reflects Amsterdam's damp weather.
Which seems like a reasonable guess for a kid.
Totally. But Henry gently corrects her. It's a deliberate artistic choice. The light is being used to illuminate the face and assert the artist's individuality and genius. It's about moving past the label of being a simple artisan.
It's an assertion of the inner self against whatever is happening externally. which, as winter solstice approaches in the novel, this focus on light conquering shadow feels very symbolic of Mona's own struggle.
For sure. And finally, in this section, a real philosophical shift with Vermeer. The infinitely small is infinitely big, looking at the astronomer.
Vermeer is such a study in contrast to Rembrandt.
Absolutely. He was obscure, work alone in these small rooms, and left behind almost no documentation. And Henry points out that Vermeer likely used a camera obscura. You can think of it as like the original cheat sheet for perspective.
It allowed him to capture images, adjust focus, trace lines.
Right. It let him create these intensely detailed, reduced images. And the subject, the astronomer, he's doing rational work in the daylight, mapping outer space. This reflects the whole 17th century intellectual climate, where society was starting to demolish the church's dogmatic, man-centered vision of the world. They were using rigor to pierce the mysteries of the universe.
So Henry introduces the idea, which echoes the philosopher Blaise Pascal, of the two infinites.
The great and the small. The idea that rigorous attention to the smallest, tiniest detail can unlock vast universal truths.
And this is where Mona has her big breakthrough.
It is. For the very first time, she moves beyond her contract with Henry and feels genuine sensory pleasure fully and sincerely. She achieves this state of internal detachment, appreciating the art entirely for its own sake.
And that fills Henry with this mix of pride and melancholy, right? He knows she's growing into her own independence.
It's a beautiful, bittersweet moment. And this moment of genuine appreciation perfectly sets up Part 5, Stability and the Sublime, where Henry turns to lessons on control and on faith.
So we start with Nicolas Poussin. Let nothing make you tremble. Poussin was the champion of classicism. He was all about stability, simplicity, and sobriety.
He was the complete opposite of the irregular pearl of Baroque art. He famously said that Caravaggio had come into the world to destroy painting.
A bit dramatic.
A little. And his artwork, The Arcadian Shepherds, it depicts these figures just calmly contemplating a tomb in a serene landscape. Poussin wanted control. He couldn't handle the monumental political works demanded in France, so he quickly went back to Rome.
So the lesson is this ideal of unwavering control, and this contrasts so directly with Monod's later experience during that critical medical examination. She's literally fighting her own body's shaking, trying to embody Poussin's stability.
And that's when she overhears the doctor's worrying verdict. It's 50-50. She's actively using the art as this psychological brace against her own paralyzing fear. It's incredible. It really is. All right, so next, a shift from control to hope with Philippe de Champagne. Always believe miracles are possible. And they're looking at the Ex Voto of 1662, the painting of the two praying nuns.
This one is so deeply personal. Champagne painted it after his own daughter, Catherine, became paralyzed at age 24 in the Jansenist convent of Port Royal.
So Champagne, who usually painted princes and cardinals, he puts what is most precious to him, his ailing daughter, on the canvas. And the key distinction Henry makes is about the two kinds of light.
Yes. There's the physical light of our universe that defines colors and shapes, and then there's the second kind, the light of grace, which is divine in origin, and it's breaking into our human daylight.
The painting is this message of faith and the possibility of miracles. But Henry notes that the miracle is actually driven by the conviction of the second, older nun, Agnes, not by Catherine herself.
It's a testament to the idea that sometimes hope has to come from an external, unshakable belief. Someone has to believe for you. Wow. And finally, in this part, Antonio Canaletto. Make the world stand still, looking at the Molo Venice. Canaletto specialized in veduto, the painted view, basically the ancestor of the postcard.
Right. And he used a portable camera obscura to capture these super wide angles, going beyond the 180-degree limit of the human eye. And he didn't paint reality precisely. He would reconfigure elements he sketched into a capriccio, an arrangement, to create views that were actually more beautiful than reality.
He also used staffage, right, the little figures that are just accessories, to diminish the human scale.
Exactly. It's all about the landscape and the harmonious light, which he achieved with successive layers of glaze. The lesson is about serenity and making time, making the world stand still.
But this momentary serenity is broken. The narrative intrigue comes back. While she's studying the painting, Mona spots the lady with the green shawl.
The mysterious watcher who has been discreetly following them. The art of stasis is interrupted by this moving external mystery. The real world intrudes.
Henry's weekly visits just keep challenging Mona, as she has to confront the reality of her prognosis and her parents' total instability. And Schlesser so cleverly uses the later art movements to provide lessons that are tailored to her developing independence and the confrontations she has to have.
He does. For instance, Henry uses Thomas Gainsborough's The Conversing Lovers to teach her to let feelings be expressed. Gainsborough, he worked with his speed and sensuality, and he valued feelings over the rigid codes of the aristocratic world.
And this directly influences Mona's growth. After seeing her parents' turmoil and her friend Diego getting bullied, she finally confronts the bully, Guillaume. She shouts at him, she asserts her feelings, she's actively using that lesson of emotional expression, even if it leads to conflict.
It's a huge step for her. And the journey takes them into the Musée d'Orsay, where they encounter Gustave Courbet's A Burial in Ornans, and the tough lesson that comes with it. Shout loud and walk straight.
Courbet was the champion of realism, wasn't he? He depicted this somber, hostile crowd from his provincial hometown, just defying all the aesthetic and political conventions of the time.
Oh, he was incredibly controversial. He was accused of fomenting revolution, of displaying harsh truths, of refusing to smooth over any imperfections. So Henry uses Courbet to teach Mona about confronting opaque reality and asserting the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Imperfections, Henry insists, are the spice of life.
And that harsh realism is immediately balanced by Rosa Bonheur's Ploughing in the Nivernais, which teaches Mona that animals have souls.
A beautiful contrast. Bonheur kept a whole menagerie of animals and believed their beauty was equal to that of humans. The central feature of the painting is the ox, whose eye is an admoniteur. It demands the viewer's empathy and attention.
This one really resonated with Mona. She was already sensitive, but after this, she decides she'll only eat vegetables after her parents finally leave her in peace about it. It symbolizes her own emerging moral conviction.
As we move toward the end of the 19th century, we see Whistler's famous portrait of his mother, arrangement in gray and black, which teaches her to find the music in silence.
Whistler used musical terms in his titled arrangements, harmonies, to define his artistic goal, which was finding harmony in composition.
Right, and the portrait itself is this declaration of filial love. He venerates his mother with this rigid pose, but a supple silhouette, which gives the whole work this melancholic and reverent atmosphere. Mona learns that communication isn't always loud. Sometimes you find profound truths in the silent arrangement of things.
Which leads to the acceleration of the modern era, focusing on change. Claude Monet's painting of the St. Lazare station teaches her that all flees, all fades.
Yeah, the speed, the steam, the new Haussmann buildings, it's the embodiment of modernity. Monet invented the series, painting 7 different versions of the station. He was essentially translating the old Greek philosophical idea of pantarei. Everything flows into painting. His rapid brushstrokes mirror the acceleration and the impermanence of life.
And this sense of impermanence leads to a huge moment of realization for Mona when she sees the back of the canvas.
Yes. The dirty brown canvas and the stretcher. The reality of the work is just the banality of the object that these immortal moments are set down on. It's a grounding moment.
The psychological journey then culminates in the 20th century, where the art directly addresses subconscious fears. Vincent van Gogh's church at Auvers-sur-Oise teaches her to pin down your dizziness.
Mona is immediately struck by the dizzying, swaying look of the church. She recognizes the feeling her father has when he drinks. Henry confirmed Van Gogh was stimulated by absinthe, that he found euphoria in painting despite his massive personal ordeals, failed collaborations, self-mutilation, confinement.
The painting is the study in purposeful chaos. The dark sky contrasts with the luminous past, so the lesson is about translating inner chaos into expression. To pin down your dizziness is to harness that turmoil and convert it into creation.
It's a powerful tool for her to have. And Henry continues with lessons on simplicity, using Piet Mondrian's early haystacks to teach her to simplify. Mondrian was influenced by theosophy and sought this kind of purification to reach the essential truth of things.
These early haystacks from 1908, they're intentionally unstable, shaking a little. He uses these thick brushstrokes to externalize the intrinsic aura of this very banal object. The lesson is about seeking illumination through elemental simplicity, which is a direct counterpoint to the dizziness of Van Gogh.
Then the lessons shift to a total artistic rejection of the past. Marcel Duchamp's ready-made, The Bottle Rack, teaches Mona to shake everything up.
And Mona is disturbed by this one. The common, vulgar object reminds her of her father's wine trophies. Duchamp just breaks down all the categories. He just selected the bottle rack because it had no particular characteristics, using it to wage war on the classical idea of art and force the viewer to question society's mechanisms.
That questioning culminates with René Magritte and the lesson. Listen to your subconscious, embodied in the red model.
The painting of the ankle boots that are mutating into bare human feet.
So creepy and so brilliant. Magritte, a surrealist, wanted to confront us with the originality of our dreams in the most ordinary settings. Mona recognizes this terrifying, unsettling atmosphere. The surrealists privilege the subconscious, the layer we visit in our dreams.
And Mona points out the transition zone, where the inert leather merges with the living skin. Henry confirms that zone embodies the back and forth between the brain's opposite but continuous states, the dreamy and the alert.
Henry's final lessons are what prepare her for the ultimate truth: loss and independence. The discussion of Marina Abramovich's installation, The Le Sauvoulet, offers the final poignant lesson. A separation is a new life.
This sculpture of separation symbolizes that what weighs on us is sometimes the very thing we love. Henry explains that departure is both an ending and a beginning, which is crucial wisdom delivered right before Mona's final confrontation with her family about the truth of her grandmother's death.
And the climax of the novel reveals the entire purpose of this 52-week art curriculum. Mona's psychosomatic blindness hung but by a thread, the seashell pendant Colette gave her. The root trauma was the family taboo surrounding her grandmother Colette's euthanasia.
Colette, who was facing this rare neurodegenerative disease combining Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, chose the right to die with dignity, which was consistent with a promise Henry had made to her decades earlier. Her parting words were, "Forget the negative, my darling. Keep the light forever inside you."
Henry's weekly visits were this extraordinary act of preemptive love, a plan for Mona to archive herself through beautiful works of art. The doctor even confirms Henry's brilliance, telling Mona that her exceptional sight must be used to look at everything, for them to remain forever her reservoir of colors and joys, should blindness catch up with her one day.
And in the end, the art literally saves her. After a final emotional collapse, Mona experiences darkness again on a train, and she clings to an art lesson, a phrase that lights up from the void: black is a color.
And that one phrase summons this whole constellation of colors and inspiring forms she had seen over the past year. Henry's curriculum was a profound, unqualified success.
Schlesser's achievement here is it's incredible, marrying centuries of aesthetic and philosophical thought to this high-stakes, deeply intimate story of family trauma and resilience. It's just a powerful argument for art as a necessary tool for psychological survival.
It truly is. Which brings our exploration of Mona's eyes to a close. Henry really did arm her with a phenomenal philosophical toolkit.
He really did. And I would love to know which of these profound lessons resonates most with all of you listening. Do you need Michelangelo's transcendence of matter, or maybe Canaletto's serenity to make the world stand still? Let us know in the comments.
A huge thank you for joining us for this exploration. If you loved our conversation, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support really helps us bring these literary explorations to life every single week.
And make sure you join us next time for episode 40, when we dive into the beautiful and evocative world of Eowyn Ivey's Black Woods, Blue Sky.
We'll be trading the museums of Europe for the wild Alaskan frontier. It's going to be a great one.
We'll see you then.